Every day, they answer the call. They see what most people will never see. They carry moments most people will never understand. But when the call ends, who is there for them?
911, what's your emergency?
So today on Mind on the Line, we've got some really special guests here with us. First of all, I want to say hello to my co-host there, Mr. Scott Pavlak, career law enforcement officer and military as well. And I'd also like to say hello to our first guest, and Dan. His name is Dan Roach, career law enforcement officer. As you'll hear him go through his background. Dan, thank you very much for appearing on the show. It means a lot. We've been talking about this for a long time, so I'm excited that we're finally doing this.
Glad to be here, brother.
Yeah, really. And Dan, just a short, brief kind of intro to Dan. I met Dan at a first responders wellness retreat where I was in crisis, and Dan very graciously spent time with me, worked through a crisis, and helped me work through that crisis. And I'm forever grateful because I credit him with really preventing me from doing things that I didn't want to do, or that I really didn't want to do. But when you get to a point where you're overwhelmed with critical incident stress, and we'll talk about that, especially about the weight behind the badge. Although never being a law enforcement officer, being in first responders land, I certainly understand the weight of critical incident stress and what the impact it has. But as we like our guests to do, give us a little bit about your background, what you've done, the highlights and lowlights of your career, and kind of the impact of what critical incident stress, or the weight of the badge, as we're calling this episode, what it meant from your experience.
So I worked in law enforcement for 31 years. I'm retired now. And my first 26 plus years, I worked with the Illinois State Police. And about the first 13, 14 years of my career, for the most part, was in undercover narcotics and gang enforcement. I did spend my first 18 months on the road as a trooper in inner city Chicago expressways, and that was a gas. That was a lot of fun. So it was after that I went in to what they call DCI, Division of Criminal Investigation, and I went in as an undercover agent. So then I did undercover work for about the next 13 or so years. And after that, I was transferred back to Chicago, where I was in command over a lot of different specialty criminal investigative units and general investigative units. After retiring from the state police, I worked as a deputy chief for the Schaumburg Police Department, which is in Cook County, outside of the city.
Well, that's quite a distinguished career over a period of how many years? 20?
Total 31 years.
31 years. So I can imagine, especially being in criminal investigation division and things that you had seen there were pretty impactful events. I know you've shared some of those personally with me as well, and how they impacted you. And it really, let's start with the role itself, because policing is different in in many ways, right? What would you say the job demanded from you that people outside the profession either don't see or don't understand?
I'd say I probably didn't understand a lot of it while I was going through it myself. So I think there's just like everybody, life is hard, and everybody has stress. And I think the big difference with first responders is, yes, we have the stresses of civilian life, as all civilians, but there's also a real lot of consistent and hardcore stress with being a first responder. And on top of that, there is a tremendous amount of exposure to trauma. throughout the careers, whether it's trauma you're experiencing directly yourself, or you are helping other people during their traumas. So that has a very significant impact in the long run on our brothers and sisters as first responders, because as the common saying is, the body keeps the score, and all the stress and trauma that our people experience really does have an impact on them. And I think most importantly, it impacts their families as well. And I think that's one of the most significant issues and challenges for first responder families.
So Dan, I'm kind of curious. One of the things I noted in your career, you had all of the things of a first responder, but I kind of wanted to add in there, can you address, was there even more added stress or less in the undercover that you had to do?
I'd say, I don't want to say that there was more. I guess that's a good question, Scott. I would just say it was different, right? I as an undercover agent, it was exciting, it was challenging. Sometimes it was pretty terrifying, and that was all things I wanted, man. That was I signed up for that, and so. That was really, really good. And so the stress that I incurred as a undercover agent was unique, right? But, I also didn't have as much experience as my patrol brothers and sisters, on numerous, maybe traffic stops. Most certainly, I didn't have much experience like with handling domestic situations, right? That just wasn't much of my career. As a narcotics officer, I did, I was undercover for probably 6 or 7 years, actually. And but there was also, after that time, there was a lot of tactical, car stops and a real lot of tactical street enforcement and all that kind of stuff. So that was fun. Mm-hmm. And so there was stress with it. I don't think that there was more stress than my patrol brothers and sisters. So
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. Dan, I'll tell you, this is, I've heard you speak about your unique experiences and what you've endured over the course of your career, and certainly how it's impacted you. What does it mean, from your opinion, to stay in control in this job? Because that people say you got to stay in control. I know a lot of first responders won't ask for help because they believe in doing so is the loss of control. What would you tell young troopers, young officers, anybody, medics, EMTs, firefighters, anybody who's in the first responder business?
Well, I think, I kind of think there's two levels of staying in control. One is your outward performance, your outward behavior. And I think we all get trained very, very well to do that. And for the most part, we all do a pretty good job of maintaining good self-control, good professionalism under very difficult situations, especially when you're being antagonized or threatened or all of those types of things. So I'm very, very proud of how my brothers and sisters all across this nation do that. And then there's staying in control inside yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's a more challenging game in a lot of ways. And it's really being self-aware of what you're thinking, how you're feeling, all of those types of things. And we don't get trained on that. And I think over time, if you're not aware of the impact of the job and of the things that you see, that's where life and the demons can catch up on you.
Yeah, for sure. Those are great points.
So moving on, I get the opportunity here and the honor of introducing Carrie Matthews. Carrie is a Chicago police officer. I like to consider her a friend. I know she's had an impact on a number of people in regards to critical incident and stress on the job and helping many of us, including myself, she's helped me to deal with some crises. Kerry, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, your career, and anything else you want to introduce us to.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott and John, for having me. And Dan, good to see you.
You too.
As well. I am Kerry. I am in my 22nd year of the Chicago Police Department. I come from a family of first responders. My grandfather was a police officer, Chicago. My father, Chicago police officer. My brother, a suburban police officer. My husband, a Chicago police officer. And my father-in-law, a Chicago police officer. So married, 2 kids, living in the city. I have worked in Rogers Park, which is down at the very northeast end of the city. I worked there for probably 16, 17 years, and then I went to a specialized unit which deals with all the body-worn camera videos, and that's what I'm currently doing now. So I've worked patrol, I've worked some teams, I worked inside, I worked in CAPS, I've done a lot of things within the police department.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is ask you, in law enforcement, we are exposed to a number of things. Certainly I know that from my career, and Dan, who's already spoken. I'm probably putting you in a trick bag, but what types of calls or situations in your career tend to stick the most?
That's a great question. The ones that tend to bother me the most are any call including children or seniors. But with children, I have always been I can relate, and I do very well on jobs that have to do with children. I don't know if it's just something in me, but any of those, they stick with me. I will go home and have the nightmares of them, or wanting to know like what happened in the future, things like that. But they do seem to stick in the brain, and the flashbacks of horrible things that have happened definitely are ones that stick with me probably the most.
A term that we've heard in other segments of this show is predictability. Do you feel that, say, for example, the type of call, what you're going into versus the type of call nothing about, does that weigh on your overall stress? Does that weigh on how you perform your job?
Well, there was something that I learned in the academy, which they were always telling us, nothing is routine. So nothing is the same. So I was never complacent going into calls. I always was aware and looking around and wanting to know, because we didn't know. The dispatchers will give you as much information as they got, but sometimes, as you know, the information isn't correct, or they didn't give you the full information. So I went into every call already higher up and higher alert to knowing things, let alone if it was a noise disturbance or a criminal sexual assault or a man with a gun, anything like that. I was going in kind of the same awareness.
When you look at your job, I'm looking at different aspects of it. As a law enforcement officer, we talk in this program to various, first responders. As a law enforcement officer, our critical incidents, our stressful calls versus, say, that of my host, John, a firefighter, an EMS person. What do you think? Do you think your calls are worse? Do you think they're the same? How do you feel law enforcement is versus the other critical incidents?
So I like to keep the healthy banter with our lovely firemen, as always. I give them much respect.
Hey, Kerry, do you know why God gave us firemen?
Why is that?
So police can have heroes too. Okay, please continue.
That was a good one. I like it. I give them as much respect because they don't know what's going on. And a lot of the times we have to work hand in hand together on incidents. And I know they see the rough of the rough as we do. So we're all kind of messed up in that realm of trying to get things out of our head when we're there and when we're seeing things. But I don't think that one job is worse than the next or one job is easier than the next. With everything, each call is different. And your stress is always up. Like I always feel like you get the radio call, you're going, you hit the acknowledge button on the PCAT and you're ready to go, and you don't know what you're walking into, no matter how much information that you have. But I like to, think of the firemen as partners to us, even though, I will give them a hard time. And, they're going to, on a fire, they're going to spend a lot of time with me. So, I have asked, can I climb the ladder?
And they let you.
They did not.
I can tell you this as well. I mean, being a fireman, there's, the police always park in front of you, 3 law enforcement officers. The beef with the firemen is you're parked in front of the fire hydrant, right? And you're always parked in front of the house that we need to get to and stuff like that. No, but I'll tell you, I've encountered. I'm very fond of law enforcement officers. I think I've told all 3 of you this. I grew up with idolizing law enforcement officers my entire life. I think at our first retreat, I said I didn't even feel worthy. I thought my trauma wasn't as severe. It wasn't as intense. It didn't have as much of an adverse impact as what you all go through. You all go through every day. And so, Kerry, especially you, were very gracious to say you've earned your spot here.
Absolutely.
You really have. You earned your spot here, and that's really well. This next segment, I'd like to. This is really for anybody, and we, please feel free to opine. It's internalizing the job. Well, that never happens, right? In first responder.
Yeah, never.
Never happens. But at some point, the job really starts to become part of how you see everything, right? So
Absolutely.
How would you, this is for the both of you, this is for all of us actually. How does the job change how officers view people or situations? Does it affect trust, relationships, outlook? What shifts internally over time?
Well, for me, I would say that I'm a very untrusting person, because as a law enforcement officer, people lie to me constantly.
No.
And I know it's very hard to believe, but they lie, of course, because nobody wants their freedoms taken away. They don't want to go to jail for the things that they've done. So I definitely have changed. And I didn't believe it when I first got in the academy, when they said, this job's going to change you. And I'm thinking, no way, I'm still going to be the Kerry that I am. But it really does change you, because you do see the bad. Nobody's calling you to come over and have lunch or a barbecue. They're calling you on their worst days. So I definitely am always leery. I'm hyper vigilant. I'm always looking around. I'm, even with my kids and doing that. And unfortunately, I'm trying not to project that on my children.
Yeah.
That's how I grew up, was as my dad was a police officer. You can't go here, you can't go there. There's bad people here. Don't hang out on the street corner. You can't hang out at that park after 9 o'clock. So I'm trying now to change that, to not be so hesitant to let my children live their life. Yeah. Through the eyes and through everything I see. I don't want to portray that on them, so they're scared of everything. It's unfortunate that I have to see all the bad things. That's the job I signed up for, but I don't want them to fear everything.
Yeah. Dan, what would you say? Changes over time?
Oh, absolutely. And I think Kerry mentioned the word hypervigilance. I'd say hypervigilance encapsulates what happens with most first responders. And just that, again, that continued exposure to stress and trauma, and just some of the things that you see that you can't unsee, that you hear that you can't unhear. But this continued, it's really like a permanent fight or flight, right? And it's not a switch you can just, biologically turn off when you go home. Your system, your neurochemistry, your biophysiology all responds in a certain way to the stress and the dangers and the experiences of the job. And that, that hypervigilance becomes the filter with how you see the world. And that impacts your relationships major time. It impacts your own attitude, how you see things. So yes, the job can and most likely will significantly impact how you live.
Did you see changes, both of you? Did you see gradual changes or changes that were noticeable or obvious when they became full effect? Were changes in relationship with your family and friends? I mean, I would imagine as not so much as firemen, but as law enforcement officers, I hear the constant, I lost a lot of friends that I had before I got on the job. One, they don't understand. Two, they may not agree. And three, it's just, you work different hours, you work different times, but your exposure to continuous trauma or critical incidents or the severity of incidents you see over the course of a law enforcement career, I would imagine you would have then a very select number of friends, maybe even no friends beyond who's on the job, right?
John, can I add something to that before they answer it? Because I want to take this another direction, but answer the same question. Certainly in my career, John, you and I have had conversations, and I know I have with Dan. Adding to that perspective, we're talking about we can't trust the bad guys. We limit our friends because the people we're around. We can't hang out with felons. We can't do all those things. I'm going to go a step further. It's my 38th year on this job, and I've worked through all those ranks, as has Dan. And that's why I'm throwing this back to you, Dan. I find that I don't not only trust the bad guys and the calls that I'm on and some of my family, but I don't necessarily trust some of the officers I work with. And I'll give you the example of why. I know as a chief, I learned when an officer came to me to ask for help, the first choice I had to make was, now that he's come to me, can I let him stay on the job? And if I do get him help, I could cause that job to be lost.
Yeah.
If I don't get him help, I'm going to go to his funeral. And then whatever I do, I know as a chief, but even as a fellow officer, that's going to ring throughout the department, and I'm going to get labeled as I can't be trusted. So now I'm hated by the people I go to calls on. I'm hated by the backup that I'm going with. And my family's mad at me because all of this I'm taking it home. I guess I'm curious. Dan's got an extensive history. Kerry, you do. You have families in the job. I want to take that question further and go, how does that play out? The whole trust. And then what does that add to the stressors that we're talking about that lead to the cop that commits suicide, the firefighter that goes crazy on a call and is rude? I hope that's not a too vague of a question or too open of a question for each of you.
So the first thing that it comes to mind for me is, we become cynical, right? We start not to trust, people. There's, especially as you go higher up the chain, there's politics that become involved, and there's other types of egos that become involved, and that can always be a challenge and a challenging balance in trying to make sure that you are looking out for your people and making sure they're doing good, and at the same time making sure that the organization and your people are fulfilling the mission. And knowing full well that this career, this job, what your people are doing does have impact on them. It's a very fine balance, and I think that's just that's part of the challenges of the leadership. And I think as long as you keep it in perspective and recognize that it's about your people, it's about the mission, then it's about you too, right? But the mission and your people. And there's a great book, The Mission, The Men, and Me by Peter Blaber. And he's a Delta Force, former Delta Force operator, great, terrific guy. But anyway, I always think of that. It was about the mission, the men and the women, and me. And that's what leadership was about. And sometimes you ran into some very, very difficult situations with some of your people who were having personal difficulties, professional difficulties, and it just had to take it one case at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can certainly appreciate all of that. It's over the course of a career, That's what's happened. You keep adding to those layers. You keep adding to the layers you keep adding to the weight, but you take away that Teflon. We heard a little bit about that today at the retreat, about Teflon coming away piece by piece by piece.
And while you're struggling, you don't know who to go to
Right.
get help, because even the people you might trust, now you don't. And if you tell them, maybe they're going to tell somebody else. And I know where John's going to go with this, and probably Kerry. We on this program want to bring this to you because we have some help and some solutions maybe that can help this a little. That's why we hope a lot of you are tuning in.
Yeah, and that's that's a good point, Scott. We'll talk here in a little bit about resources, things you can do. We'll talk about the work that we're all doing here with Haymarket, as well as the Cornerstone Retreat Center. Dan will talk a little bit about that. Carrie's work with the other side of suicide and her organization, and how she's really bringing awareness to, hey, stay vigilant. And when we stay vigilant, you have to stay vigilant on the job. Part of that is being aware and vigilant of your own, and I like to call it operational readiness. We talk about tactical things when operational readiness come in, but then we never consider our own emotional well-being as part of that operational readiness. When I was in flight school, they would take my instructor. I was a private pilot. I had a private pilot instrument license, commercial instrument license, multi-engine it. And every flight we would take, he would do a check-in. He would do a risk management. How you feeling? What's going on today? And if I gave him any inkling, well, you know what? I had a fight with my wife, or I had something going on at work, he'd check it out. But then there were a few times he goes, you know what? Let's do some ground school today. Let's do some of that. Let's not fly today. Let's do some ground school today. And it was all part of the risk management. So I'd like to, for the first responders that are listening and those that are listening, take inventory of what is going on with you. Because if something isn't right in that emotional balance, especially, now I've never been a police officer, but especially in a law enforcement capacity, it could mean the difference between success and disaster. So no, I definitely can appreciate that.
John, I absolutely think that in trust, because I'm not a boss. I'll never be a boss.
No, you're a boss, all right.
you know that.
It would be hard as a patrolman. You don't know who to trust. You don't know who you can go to and say, I have this going on, because of all the things that you had said. But I'm hoping that now in 2026 that we're making a change, that people are okay to go and talk to a boss or somebody else and say, I have this going on, without thinking they're going to take my gun, they're going to take my job away, because it's not like it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago, where everybody kept it inside and didn't realize it until the last minute, and then it's too late. I think that now I am more prone to ask people straight out, like, how are you doing? How are things going? Yeah. Are you thinking of killing yourself? Or are you in this, are you drinking too much? Are you not going home because you're working too much, because you don't want to stop moving, because then you're going to deal with all the crises and traumas that you had. So I think that it's great that we need to push out there to get help and to know who you can get help with, because there is always one supervisor that you can trust or that you've connected with that isn't automatically going to be like, okay, let's start doing this and get you to the hospital and do this. They may sit and talk with you and find different ways or different avenues to help you, just like where I met you guys, the Haymarket retreat.
Yeah.
Things like that. There are so many things out there that I'm hoping, and that's why I keep preaching it, that there are people that want to help you. And, my dad was old school, saying that your biggest enemy was another copper, but that's how he grew up. And when he was on the job, they were tight, but they weren't,
right,
type of thing. So,
Kerry, would you agree? Peer support. What are your thoughts, Dan? What are your thoughts? Peer support is in many departments works well, and I know places where it works well. I know in other departments I hear different stories about, they just shoved me to EAP. What do either of you have an opinion on peer support? Good, bad, recommended, not?
Well, I most certainly do. I want to touch on one thing, about your dad saying that your worst enemy could be another cop. And I believe our worst enemy is ourselves.
Yes.
That's the most dangerous enemy we have. Many, many, many more of us die from suicide than we do from line of duty deaths. And John, as you alluded to earlier, I mean, we train really well for operational readiness, and we're ready, and we do such a terrific job with that. And it can be everything from, firefighting. It can be hand-to-hand combat, using your weapons, street tactics, all that kind of stuff. We do a fantastic job at that. But what we haven't done is we have not educated and trained ourselves and our people on, hey, the emotional aspect of what this job does to you. And there's all kinds of research, all kinds of studies out there. It's just, I mean, it's really a no-brainer, but it's something that we've been missing the ball on for a long, long time. So then what comes into play, here's where peer support comes into play, is that, yes, in this country and most certainly in first responder world, we have basically a culture of silence about mental health, right? About emotional well-being. And we've been afraid, terrified even, of letting anybody know of any of these emotional demons we may have in our closet, right? And so unfortunately that's killed a lot of our brothers and sisters over these decades. And so I'm going to make that pitch for peer support. Peer support is absolutely wonderful. And yes, peer support's become a very common term in the last, 5-10 years. There's been many, like Kerry alluded to, informal leaders out there, brothers and sisters who have been doing peer support for their other brothers and sisters for a long, long time. They're out there, they see them, they recognize them, they know what's going on, they take care of them, right? And so now we still have those people, but we have people who are being formally trained in peer support. So they're going out there, they're more aware of these issues, they train to recognize them and train how to approach and listen to our brothers and sisters who may be, having some challenges. So peer support, I strongly believe is one of the best things that we have as far as taking care of our first responder brothers and sisters.
And I know as a chief, peer support brings with it the legal backing in many states and the confidential aspects that if I go to that sergeant or that officer on peer support, whatever level I'm at, and I feel I can go to that person, there are restrictions on them running to somebody where the peer support officer may know, hey, you're at this level and you need to talk to somebody, but I don't need to run to the chief's office and say, get an ambulance and lock Kerry up, because that's not the role of peer support. It's to get, they're trained to recognize some things and to know where to get the help.
Yes.
Exactly. And I think that I'm a big fan of peer support. And even it doesn't even have to be labeled as peer support. Right. You could be talking to somebody or talking to your partner in a car. That's peer support. It doesn't have to be like you have to go here and you have to go see that person that's in that room at 2:00 tomorrow. I think that a lot of people, like you said, Dan, are doing it and they don't even realize they're doing it. And I was trained up with Chicago in 2007. So I've definitely been a member of it. I'm very passionate about it and being there for people as well. And with Chicago, I have used our employee assistance program.
Excellent.
So, and I have used other people that I've worked with as peers to just maybe vent after a call or vent about, something that might be going on at home that I need to get out of my head so I can pay attention at work. So I think it happens more often than people are saying, because they'll be like, oh, we don't have peer support or we're not doing that. But they may not realize that they are doing it every day just by asking somebody, how are you doing? And listening.
Yeah. So go ahead, Dan.
Well, I just I completely agree with you, and I think the vision, the hope is that someday that becomes ingrained in our culture as first responders. That yes, our emotional well-being and looking out for each other, not just with the dangers on the street and on the job, but looking out for each other with the dangers of what happens within us, and knowing full well that all of that goes home. All of that goes home to our families. So we're looking out for our brothers and sisters, and we're looking out for our families. And that is a culture that absolutely can be created and should be created and should be a priority in every first responder agency throughout the country.
That's a great point. You know, I'm a safety officer in my fire company. And as you probably, as law enforcement officers, if you leave firemen to their own devices, they'll break every window in the structure, right? Little garbage can fire, we're breaking everything else, right? You have to change the culture. So even in my own fire company, creating a culture of safety is different, but it takes that continuous practice. Takes that continuous reinforcement, and that it also takes the a lot of this is leadership, but it could also be peer-to-peer to say, it's okay. There's no consequence to say, I need help. As a matter of fact, that's a good segue. Let's talk about the cost of not dealing with it. And I know all three of you have had personal experience with either yourselves or others that on the job that haven't dealt with the exposure to repeated trauma or repeated stress or right? It builds over time. So what happens if it's not addressed? What are the consequences of carrying this type of burden without support? How does it show up personally or professionally? And what do you think officers are doing? And I can almost speak for everybody, but what do you think officers are doing instead of addressing it?
Well, what I think is happening is we're not in the realm of put it away, pack it away like we were 30 years ago, and don't talk about your feelings, or don't let it out, or don't seek help. I think what's happening more is I myself have had friends on the job that have taken their own lives. Unfortunately, my father, retired of 35 years, took his own life. It'll be 3 years in July. And the way that they were with these people, these friends of mine, even my father, is that they internalized everything. And I had no idea. I had no idea that he was in as much pain or anger or whatever was going on, that was going to be his final decision, was to take his life. And even with a friend of mine that I spoke to that day, I had no idea that they were going to go later and take their own life. So I think that unfortunately is what's happening, is first responders are turning to drugs or alcohol to try to mask things and get through things every day until it gets to the point where they can't anymore. And the demons are winning, and the voices in their head are telling them, you're this, you're that, you're nobody, your family's better without you, your friends are better without you, the job doesn't care about you. All the things that we know when we are thinking realistically are not true.
Right.
But when you're in that space, you decide and you believe what your brain is telling you. And unfortunately, suicide amongst first responders is at its all-time high. And it's one of those things where this is what brought me to Haymarket and to meet you guys. And like you said, Dan, I cannot say enough about Dan. Him and I joke around a lot, but he literally saved my life in that, with dealing with my dad's suicide, because you never know. One day I could be talking to you, that the next minute you're going to get that awful phone call and nobody's talking about it. People want to keep it hush hush, because I almost feel like if people believe if we talk about it, we're going to make it happen. No, what's happening is it's happening. no matter if we talk about it or not, I'm not going to talk about it. And Dan's going to go home tonight and say, you know what? Kerry gave me a great idea today. That's not what's happening. It's already in their head. It's already monopolizing them every day, and they're not letting it out. They're not talking to anybody. So I have done a lot of research. I have talked to a bunch of people. I've read a lot of books. So I am more key. Again, I will ask you, how are you doing? And if I hear the fine or I hear the okay, I'm like, okay, well, let's just sit down because I have a couple more questions.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty persistent. So
Oh, you certainly are. And one of the ways, you in response to the question is for decades, when we came on the job, I was in the academy 40 years ago, actually. But when we came on the job, it was common knowledge that at the police academy that cops had higher issues, all kinds of issues. And there's so much research and study that shows that first responders have higher levels of depression, anxiety, PTSD, suicide, and many physical health issues than our civilian counterparts. So that right there shows that what happens is if we aren't aware of these issues and these challenges early on in our career, that it's going to manifest in things like higher anxiety and depression, PTSD, suicide. So it's very, very much a reality for us. And that's not, coming from a victim mentality. No, we're not victims. It's a reality. So just like you are aware of, threats out when you're out on the street or in any operational environment, you're supposed to be situationally aware. Well, that's what we need to be inside. We need to be situationally aware, which is self-aware of what's going on with us and how are things impacting us. How did seeing those dead kids impact me? And am I going to bring that home? How is having to use physical force on somebody? How has that impacted me? That's not admitting to any weakness or anything like that. In fact, by asking and being aware, you can keep yourself stronger and better. And it just works all the way around. But that's our reality. And we need to educate and train our brothers and sisters all the way from the start at the academy, all the way from the start, all the way through the end. Because also, as far as retirement goes, how many times have you heard our brothers and sisters saying, all I got to do is make it to the finish line, then everything's going to be great. All I got to do is retire. I won't have any of these problems anymore. I won't have any demons. And that's not true.
Yeah.
That's
I
just simply
think
not
that
true.
people today is, as you guys came up, and even when I first started, it was suck it up. You saw something, you saw this,
Push through it,
you're
right?
going to a car accident and, unfortunately a child died there and suck it up, Dan. We got another job. If you can't handle this job, get out of here.
Right.
Now I think people are talking about it more, and I think that we need to get ahead of it. Instead of being reactive, we need to be proactive about mental health and first responders and what they see. Yes, we signed up for this job. Yes, we know the dangers and what we're going to come up with, but it doesn't mean that we're not human, that we don't have feelings, we don't have nightmares, that we have all these things that other people have. Yes, we can deal with it a little bit better because we do have to go to the next call. We do have to move on. But then after, we do need some type of relief and release to get that out. And I think that we are in the right direction. We're not there yet, but we are in the right direction of people making it more common for debriefings and things like that and retreats to let people know you're not alone. Because when somebody has already taken their own life, now we're all sad. Now we're going to put out the pamphlets. We're going to put out call 988, EAPs here. There's peer support. Where were these things prior?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, let's take this time now let's end with what actually helps. Because this is what matters, and this is what we, John and I, co-hosting, if you will, kind of want to bring to our listeners. We've talked about what can happen to them and where things can go, and we've talked a little bit about peer support. I want to start with one question, and we kind of covered it. Dan, I'm going to throw this to you and to Kerry, because both of you have worked for large organizations. What can leadership right now do? And I know that's the word with a lot of patrol officers and firefighters and someone without rank. They don't want to hear what leadership says, but they have a lot of ideas for what they can do. What can leadership do better in organizations now? I know you want to talk specifically about yours, but let's just speak in general. Organization A and B, what can they do now? Because you know the resources that are out there.
You can go
Okay,
ahead.
I'll start, I guess. So I think from a leadership standpoint, and a lot are doing it right now. They are officially developing wellness programs, right?
Yeah, for
so that's
sure.
starting to happen in more and more agencies. However, it's in the implementation that's important of that. There are agencies out there that they're talking the talk, but they ain't walking it. So they're saying, "Oh yeah, we really believe in wellness programs, and we think it's great," but then they just get so caught up in all the other stuff, and it becomes low priority again.
Yeah.
So, or it's just a checkoff thing. Okay, yeah, let's check off this box, check off that box. Okay, we covered it. Now let's just get back to work. So yes, of course that's going to happen. In the business, in our business, we are running across many more agencies that really are taking it serious. So they're developing wellness programs. They're doing everything from annual mental health checkups to peer support, developing peer support teams. We've trained almost 400 peer supporters in the last 2.5 years, just for mostly Chicago metro area and Illinois and some in Iowa. So
Who's
there
done
are a
that,
lot
Dan?
more agencies.
Is that? And I want to go to you guys because you have a lot of experience. Dan? Tell us about what you do. I know what you're involved with. Tell our listeners when you say we've trained. Who's we?
So my wife and I, about 5 years ago, we started up a nonprofit. It's called Cornerstone Retreat Center, and we call it Cornerstone Retreat Center for first responders and their families. And what we do is we provide peer-to-peer emotional wellness services to first responders and their families. So that's fire, police, dispatch, corrections, emergency room nurses, chaplains, civilian employees, whoever needs it. We'll do that. So we provide peer support. We provide, my wife is a pastor, provides chaplain services. We are both trained in spiritual direction, and so we provide some of that. And we also teach classes. So we have a 3-day peer support training course where we are training brothers and sisters to be peer supporters for their agencies, maybe for their peer support teams. And then we teach classes on stress management, resiliency, trauma management. And we'll do that specifically for first responders, but we'll also do it for couples. So they can bring their spouses in and we can train and educate them. And then finally, we bought a property that used to be a 40-acre, 9-hole golf resort, and it had a restaurant, bar, Olympic swimming pool, but it was all in terrible condition. So we've demolished all of that, and we're repurposing it as a retreat center just for first responders and their families. So that's a big project that we're working on now. We have families that do come in and fish and walk trails and sometimes camp, have special events there. So eventually we're going to be building a training event center where they can hold special events. And then after that, we'll be building cabins. So
is there a website or somewhere that somebody like me could go to get that information?
it would be Cornerstone Retreat Center, all one word, cornerstoneretreatcenter.com.
Okay. And we'll put that cornerstoneretreatcenter.com. We'll put that down in the show notes and other, as well as a ton of other resources. And I know even on your website, Dan, you've got a ton of resources for wellness for responders, and we'll put those in there as well as you got a QR code or a way for people to go ahead and donate.
Yes, there's a code on there, and there's a donation site on the website. Yes.
Fantastic.
John, can I, because it's important to me, we're all here attending a Haymarket retreat.
Yeah,
That's true.
Kerry,
I was
can you touch on Haymarket?
Absolutely. I learned of Haymarket actually through a retired sergeant with through the police department. So when I was in my bad way after my father and, kind of doing the things that now I see were not good for me, self-isolating, drinking, all the things, she had told me and sent me the flyer for Haymarket. Reach out to Dr. Cammie. And I'm like, I don't need this. What? I'm fine. I'm fine. And I wasn't fine. And finally, after the 15th time of her sending it to me, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go. I'm going to go because I'm going to see what this is about. It was something outside the city. So, you know what? Let's just see. And I came here and I met you guys, and it changed my life. And knowing that it is for all first responders, firemen, police, nurses, doctors, telecoms, dispatchers, you name it, everybody is there. And listening to people tell stories, and you may not have their exact story, but a part of it is just like you. And to know that I'm not alone in thinking this, I kind of resonate with what you're saying. I went through that, and this is what I did to help myself. And the retreat, Haymarket, is something that is very near and dear to my heart, that I will constantly recommend it to people. I will tell people how wonderful it is. It's a non-judgmental place for you to go and be honest. And how hard is that for especially police officers to sit in a room and be honest about their feelings, which is, a bad word. It makes us weak, but it really doesn't, because you're there because you want to get better. You're there because you're noticing something isn't right. And all the people that volunteer their time are there because they want to help other people, and they want them to realize you're not alone. And knowing that I have you guys now to help walk through me with this journey from day one, when I got there the first day, Dan, you guys will say, I'm not the same person.
That's true.
Anymore. I worked the program. I took the toolbox and use it and utilize it. And I'm not saying that I'm fixed or I'm cured or by any means. I'm still messed up, but I have ways that I learned by coming to Haymarket Retreat, in things that I can do and people I can reach out to when I'm in that moment of crisis or feeling bad about myself, or the voices are really getting into, like, you suck.
Yeah.
And Kerry, for the, I got to ask this because I'm a frugal old police chief. How many thousands of dollars is it? Because you got to have lodging and you got to be here for a couple of days, and all these people come. How much do I have to pay if I want to go to that?
You know what? That, for you, we're going to give it to you for the low price of $0, sir. $0. And you even get meals, 3 meals a day. You get some snacks as well. You get coffee, water.
And I have a suite and, a room. And
yes. It's very nice. And they take very good care of us here. And yes, all you have to do is get to the location, which is a suburb outside the city.
City of Chicago, that is.
Yes.
Right by O'Hare.
You just have to reach out to Dr. Cammie and go through the little questions that she asks you. It's nothing to be afraid of, but this is so perfect because the retreat is free. There's no reason that you shouldn't be here.
And we'll put, thank you, Kerry, for that overview. We'll put Haymarket Center retreat, intensive retreat for first responders down in the show notes. Dan, you get the final question.
Does he get the final say though?
Oh, that's very.
He always thinks he does.
The
We've
real
learned that about
Kerry
him.
is coming out now.
And she said she's not a boss.
Okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to see, I get it if we're going by age.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
Ladies and
Or
gentlemen, that's
IQ.
how it usually is around first responders, right? It's when they don't break stones is when you have to worry.
How about it?
So,
How about it?
Dan, what would you say to that someone who hasn't talked about it yet? What would be their first step? What would you give, quick 30 seconds on what would you say to that young officer, young EMT, young paramedic, young fireman, or even ones that have been on the job, right? Because there is no wrong time to start.
There's no wrong time to start. I like that, John. And the number one thing is you got to tell your story about whatever it is, right? That it could be personal stuff that's going on, could be job stuff. Usually it's a combination, man. But it is so important for you to tell your story. So you got to find somebody you trust, right? Somebody you trust. And there are a lot of people out there, whether they are officially trained or not. You find somebody you trust who you can talk to, and just taking that first step of just starting to talk about it is absolutely huge. So that's the number one recommendation. Could be a peer supporter, could be a therapist. There's a lot of well-trained therapists who are culturally competent in our world. Could be a sibling, a relative, a good friend, somebody you work with. There's lots of people out there, a chaplain, a pastor, a priest, rabbi, whatever. There's so many people out there, but you just got to take that first step and go out and talk to somebody.
Yeah, that's a great point. Wearing the badge comes with responsibility, but it also comes with weight, as all of you know intimately. And that weight doesn't disappear when the shift ends. The difference is recognizing it and doing something about it, because you can carry the job without letting it carry you. I want to thank all of you for being on this show, especially Dan and Kerry, who have taken their time today from the retreat, have taken time from the retreat as peer supporters to be on the show. Lots and lots of things to do. I know that, Dan, you'll be back and we'll talk about Cornerstone specifically and what you're doing there. It was good to get a little intro, but thank you very much. It's been an honor to
really
know you,
appreciate
Kerry.
it.
I really
Thanks,
appreciate
Scott.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for
I
having
really
me.
appreciate it.
Yep.
Really appreciate
Thank
y'all
you.
being here.
You've been listening to Mind on the Line. Thank you for joining us for another honest conversation about the realities of serving others. If today's episode resonated with you, please subscribe, share it with someone who may need to hear it, and help us continue the conversation. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, no one carries this alone.